It's been over 3 decades since Eric and Lyle Menendez were sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murders of their parents. But what if the truth isn't as clear-cut as we thought? In this video, we're diving deep into the case that shocked the nation and why. Today, new evidence is sparking renewed debate about their fate. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates on this ongoing case. In 1989, Eric and Lyle Menendez committed a crime that would shake the nation to its core: the brutal killings of their wealthy parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. The crime took place on the night of August 20th in the family's Beverly Hills mansion. Jose, a successful business executive, and Kitty, a socialite, were both shot multiple times in the head with shotguns. The brothers immediately became suspects, but their reactions and behavior were confusing. The Menendez brothers initially reported the killings as a random robbery gone wrong. They claimed that intruders had entered the house and murdered their parents in cold blood. But there were inconsistencies in their story. The police quickly grew suspicious of their behavior. Both Eric and Lyle appeared to show little emotional distress, a behavior that would come to haunt them during the investigation. As the investigation continued, it was revealed that the Menendez brothers had been living in a household that, on the surface, seemed picture-perfect, but behind closed doors, their lives were filled with dysfunction and trauma. The brothers were eventually arrested, and their trial began in 1993. The case garnered immense media attention, with sensationalized coverage of the brothers' lavish lifestyle, their seemingly unfeeling attitudes towards their parents' deaths, and the strange details that began to emerge about their family life. At the heart of the trial was the question: were Eric and Lyle men who had murdered their parents out of greed, or were they victims of years of emotional and sexual abuse, pushed to the breaking point? By the end of the trial, Eric and Lyle Menendez were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The brothers' fates were sealed, but the case left lingering questions about their motivations and the justice system's treatment of their claims of abuse. In the years that followed, the Menendez brothers' story became a fixture in popular culture, but the case also remained divisive. While some believed the brothers were monsters who took their parents' lives for financial gain, others felt that the tragic history of abuse they endured could have been overlooked during their trial. If you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to like this video, and feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts on the Menendez brothers case. When the Menendez brothers trial began in the early 1990s, it was unlike anything the public had seen before. The trial was broadcasted across the country, and the media couldn't get enough of the case. Headlines, tabloids, and 24-hour news channels were fixated on the Menendez brothers and their shocking crime. It wasn't just about the brutal nature of the murders. It was about the scandal, the wealth, and the seemingly perfect family that had fallen apart. The brothers quickly became infamous, their every move scrutinized by the public. The media's portrayal of Eric and Lyle, at times, felt like a spectacle. Both brothers, while undoubtedly facing intense public and legal pressure, often appeared disconnected, almost indifferent to the weight of the situation. Their calm demeanor in the aftermath of the killings, juxtaposed with the gruesome nature of the murders, led many to form a quick judgment about their guilt. They were seen as cold, calculating figures who had killed their parents for money and inheritance. This was the narrative that dominated public opinion at the time. But the brothers' defense team soon presented a much different story. The defense argued that Eric and Lyle had been victims of years of physical and emotional abuse at the hands of their father, Jose Menendez. The psychological toll of this abuse, which included molestation by their father and an atmosphere of fear and violence, was presented as the key motive behind the killings. For many, this was a startling revelation, one that would force a reconsideration of how the case was viewed. The public's perception of the Menendez brothers was divided. While some were still convinced of their guilt, others began to sympathize with their claims of abuse. The brothers' defense, abuse as a factor in their crime, became one of the most debated aspects of the case. Were they truly victims of trauma, or were they manipulative criminals who had used abuse as an excuse for their actions? The media's role in shaping the narrative was undeniable. While the defense's arguments did bring the issue of family abuse to the forefront, the initial public perception was overwhelmingly influenced by sensationalized portrayals of the brothers as privileged, entitled individuals who had taken advantage of their wealth and social status. As the trial moved forward, the prosecution's case against the Menendez brothers focused on proving that their motive was financial. The prosecution painted a picture of two young men who, after years of living off their parents' fortune, decided to murder them for their inheritance. This narrative seemed to fit with the evidence, especially the fact that Eric and Lyle had, in the days following the murders, indulged in lavish spending sprees, buying expensive cars, and living a lifestyle that contrasted starkly with the grief one would expect from grieving children. The brothers' defense team, led by renowned attorney Leslie Abramson, took a very different approach. They argued that the brothers' motive wasn't money, but self-preservation. The defense introduced testimony from psychologists who explained the long-term psychological effects of abuse. Their argument was that the brothers had been subjected to years of emotional and sexual abuse at the hands of their father, a fact that had been kept hidden for years. This abuse, they claimed, had driven the brothers to commit the murders in a moment of desperation. Their actions, they argued, were not those of cold-blooded killers, but of two young men who had reached their breaking point. Despite the defense's attempt to frame the brothers as victims, the jury ultimately found both Eric and Lyle guilty of first-degree murder. The prosecution's portrayal of the brothers as manipulative and entitled resonated with the jury, and the conviction seemed inevitable. The brothers were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and the case was, for a time, considered closed. However, the conviction didn't silence the debate over the brothers' motives. Many argued that the abuse defense was legitimate and that the jury had been too quick to convict based on the brothers' privileged status and seemingly callous behavior. The case became emblematic of larger issues with the justice system, particularly in how it handles cases involving trauma and abuse. The Menendez brothers' conviction was seen by some as a miscarriage of justice, while others maintained that the brothers were dangerous individuals who needed to be held accountable for their actions. The lasting impact of the Menendez case was felt far beyond the courtroom. The trial raised questions about the role of abuse in criminal behavior, the influence of wealth and privilege in legal proceedings, and the way the public responds to sensationalized stories. As the years passed, the case would continue to be revisited, but the original conviction remained, leaving a complex and lasting legacy in its wake. In recent years, the Menendez brothers case has found its way back into the spotlight, reigniting debates and sparking fresh interest in the details of their trial. A new wave of documentaries, TV specials, and investigative pieces has brought the case back to the forefront of public consciousness. The release of the Menendez murders, Eric Tells All in particular, has provided a new level of access to the brothers' personal stories and experiences. Through new interviews, raw footage, and previously unreleased materials, these documentaries have sparked a renewed conversation about the Menendez brothers' fate and whether justice was truly served. One key piece of new evidence that has emerged is the release of recorded interviews with Eric Menendez, where he openly discusses his childhood trauma and the abuse he endured at the hands of his father. These recordings have given the public an intimate look at Eric's emotional state and his complicated relationship with his parents. In these interviews, Eric reveals the extent of the psychological and physical abuse, painting a picture of a life filled with fear, manipulation, and violence. These revelations have led many to reconsider the role that long-term trauma may have played in the brothers' actions. Additionally, there has been a trove of new trial information uncovered, including previously unseen documents, testimonies, and expert analyses. This includes psychological evaluations that further explain the severe mental health toll the brothers endured as a result of their abusive upbringing. As these materials have become available to the public, the case has gained new attention, with many questioning whether the brothers received a fair trial in the first place. Social media has played a crucial role in reigniting interest in the Menendez brothers case. The rise of true crime communities, discussion groups, and online forums has allowed people to engage in discussions about the possibility of resentencing or even a retrial. Viewers have dissected every piece of new evidence, analyzed the brothers' psychological assessments, and raised the question: should Eric and Lyle be given a second chance? The power of social media platforms has enabled these debates to reach a global audience, pushing the case into the public's eye once more. If you're finding this deep dive into the case as compelling as we do, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more updates as we continue to break down the latest in the Menendez brothers saga. As new documentaries and investigations have resurfaced, so too has the renewed focus on the evidence that shaped the original trial. For many, the key factor in this re-evaluation has been the psychological assessments of the Menendez brothers. In particular, there has been a shift towards a deeper understanding of their childhood trauma. Several experts have weighed in on the psychological damage caused by years of abuse at the hands of their father, Jose Menendez. In recent years, this abuse has been further validated by expert testimony, shedding new light on the brothers' mental health at the time of the murders. In previous court proceedings, the defense argued that the brothers were victims of ongoing physical and sexual abuse, which led to their violent actions. At the time, this claim was met with skepticism by both the prosecution and the jury. However, new studies and expert evaluations have emerged, providing stronger support for the defense's argument. Notably, recent psychological reports have highlighted that both brothers exhibited symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety, conditions often linked to prolonged abuse. One of the most significant pieces of new evidence is the testimony of leading psychologists and trauma specialists, who argue that the brothers were not only suffering from PTSD but also from a form of cognitive dissonance during the killings. According to these experts, Eric and Lyle may have believed that their only chance for survival was to eliminate their abusive parents, whom they feared would harm them further. This psychological defense has prompted many to question whether the brothers acted out of self-defense rather than premeditated murder. This new information has caught the attention of legal professionals and scholars, many of whom are now revisiting the case and discussing the possibility of resentencing or even a retrial. With the introduction of fresh evidence and the shifting public sentiment, there is a growing movement within the legal community to reconsider the brothers' conviction. While there is no certainty about whether a retrial will occur, the re-examination of the evidence has opened up new avenues for legal debate. When the Menendez brothers' trial first aired in the media, public opinion was largely one-sided. Many saw the brothers as entitled, privileged individuals who murdered their parents for financial gain. The brothers' apparent lack of emotion following the killings, combined with their extravagant spending sprees in the aftermath, led the public to believe that the brothers were cold-blooded murderers who were motivated solely by greed. However, as new evidence and expert testimony have come to light, public perception of the case has become far more nuanced. Today, there is a growing segment of the population that believes the Menendez brothers were victims of severe abuse. Many now argue that the brothers' actions may have been driven by years of trauma rather than a desire for money. As documentaries like the Menendez murders, Eric Tells All have gained traction, more people have begun to sympathize with the brothers and question whether they received a fair trial. The debate has shifted from one of clear guilt to a complex discussion of abuse, mental health, and whether justice was truly served. Viewers and experts alike are now divided. Should the Menendez brothers face the same punishment, or should they be given a second chance at life? The new evidence has sparked fierce debates on social media and in legal circles, with some arguing that the brothers were unjustly convicted and should be given the opportunity to prove their innocence or have their sentence reconsidered. Others, however, maintain that the brothers must still be held accountable for their actions, regardless of the trauma they endured. The changing public perception is a testament to the power of new information and the evolving understanding of trauma. It's clear that the Menendez brothers' case is far from over, and the ongoing debate shows that the complexities of the case continue to captivate both the legal community and the public. After more than 3 decades of incarceration, the possibility of resentencing the Menendez brothers has become a topic of significant debate. Legal experts and scholars are now revisiting the case, spurred on by new evidence and shifting public perceptions. But can a case like this be reopened after so many years? What are the legal hurdles involved in resentencing or seeking a retrial? In the United States, the law generally upholds the principle of finality in criminal convictions. This means that once a verdict is rendered, it is difficult, though not impossible, to revisit it. The Menendez brothers' conviction for the first-degree murders of their parents was final, and they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, legal precedents exist for post-conviction appeals, particularly in cases where new evidence comes to light or when issues with the original trial are discovered. For the Menendez brothers, the path to resentencing or a retrial would likely involve proving that new evidence, such as psychological evaluations, abuse testimony, or other findings, was not available at the time of the original trial. This could be the key to challenging their original conviction. But even if the brothers were to mount such a challenge, the legal system does not make it easy to overturn decades-old convictions. One of the main hurdles is the statute of limitations on certain types of legal challenges, which can vary depending on the state. In California, for example, there are specific timeframes within which post-conviction claims must be filed, and the longer a case sits without being challenged, the more difficult it becomes to reopen. Currently, the Menendez Brothers legal team has not made significant moves toward a retrial or resentencing, but the ongoing discussions surrounding their case, bolstered by the renewed interest sparked by documentaries and public debate, continue to create pressure for legal action. Could we see a fresh legal strategy or movement towards resentencing in the future? Only time will tell. If you're enjoying this analysis of the Menendez Brothers case, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for updates, and share your thoughts in the comments below. With the resurgence of public interest in the Menendez Brothers case, advocates for resentencing are making their voices heard. On one side of the debate, there are those who argue that the brothers were victims of severe, long-term abuse at the hands of their father. These advocates suggest that the brothers' actions were not premeditated murder but a tragic result of years of psychological trauma. They believe that Eric and Lyle should be given a chance at resentencing, especially since they've already served over 3 decades in prison. They point out that the brothers were young at the time of the murders and may have lacked the mental capacity to fully comprehend the consequences of their actions. Additionally, those advocating for resentencing argue that the brothers' abuse claims were not fully explored during their original trial. They claim that the psychological damage they suffered was not properly considered, which led to an unfair conviction. Given that the brothers have now spent a significant portion of their lives in prison, they believe it's time to reconsider their sentences in light of the new evidence that has emerged. However, there are opposing viewpoints that believe the original sentence was just and should not be revisited. Critics of resentencing argue that the brutal nature of the murders, 2 parents killed in cold blood by their own children, justifies the life sentences without parole. They claim that, while the brothers' abuse may have been horrific, it does not excuse their actions. According to this viewpoint, reopening the case and reconsidering the sentence could set a dangerous precedent for other criminal cases. It could open the door for other defendants to seek resentencing based on claims of trauma, regardless of the severity of their crimes. The argument here is that the justice system should uphold its decisions to prevent further erosion of legal finality. Public opinion is divided on this issue. Some polls indicate a growing sympathy for the brothers, with many agreeing that their upbringing should be taken into account and that their sentences should be reconsidered. However, other polls suggest that the majority of the public still believes in the severity of the crime and feels that the brothers should remain in prison for the rest of their lives. This debate has been intensified by the media's coverage of the case, which often presents both sides of the argument. Discussions in true crime communities, social media platforms, and news outlets continue to fuel the controversy over whether the Menendez brothers deserve another chance at freedom. The Menendez brothers case has gone from a sensationalized media trial to an ongoing debate about justice, trauma, and the legal system. With new evidence and fresh perspectives brought to light by documentaries and public discourse, the conversation surrounding the case has evolved into a complex discussion of whether the brothers should be resentenced or even given the opportunity for a retrial. As the case continues to garner attention, the question remains: should the Menendez brothers be given a second chance? Their case forces us to grapple with difficult issues such as the intersection of trauma and crime, the fairness of the justice system, and the potential for rehabilitation after decades of imprisonment. While we may not have an immediate answer, one thing is clear: the case is far from closed. Public perception has shifted, and the ongoing debate has forced us to re-examine not only the Menendez brothers' actions but also the broader questions about how our legal system handles cases involving abuse and mental health. As new developments continue to unfold, we may see further shifts in the legal landscape. Whether the Menendez brothers will be granted resentencing or retrial remains uncertain, but the conversation is far from over. What do you think? Should the Menendez brothers get a chance at resentencing? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters, and we love hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more updates and in-depth analysis of true crime stories. As new developments unfold, we'll be right here bringing you the latest updates on the Menendez brothers and other major cases. Stay tuned for more.